and we can have Dr. Agi address it with your outside-in view. The first two speakers talked about moonshot goals. What do you do? And you're again a marathoner, so you would kind of align yourself to that. Is what is aspirational, what is unreasonable, and how do you kind of ensure that you reconcile it with some of your day-to-day work and some personal experiences? Dr. Agi.
Well, I think if I just talk from the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum perspective, one of the aspirations we have is how do we basically grow India-U.S. trade to $500 billion. And today the trade is around $142 billion. So we have broken this from a vertical perspective. It could be retail to e-commerce down to infrastructure. And what does it take? And so we have defined vertical leaders both here and in India, because when you try to drive such a large number of trade, you got to change policies. You got to figure out how you're going to bring investment. You got to move technology from that perspective. And so we have set up teams which are basically focused on trying to move this. I'll give you an interesting example. Last 4 years, we've been able to bring in roughly $62 billion of investment from US companies into India itself. And those $62 billion, and you have to understand, our objective is not just $500 billion trade, but it's also about job creation. And more than that, I think you have to understand, you have one of the world's largest democracy, one of the oldest democracy, and the value system, the people are the same itself. And as you see what's going on with the rise of China, there is I call a threat to the current global order itself. And because US-India are aligned together, we're teaming up from a geopolitical perspective. I mean, so if you look at, in Afghanistan, Indians have spent a lot of money building infrastructure, hospital, the parliament itself. So to answer your question, I think you have to break it down bit by bit. And from a personal experience perspective, I do marathons. And, when you're running a marathon, you're not looking at the last mile itself. You're just trying to figure out the next step itself. And keep on taking the next step, next step, next step. And as long as you're going in the right direction, you will achieve that. So I think, I would say, in brief, break down the objectives, the milestones, and make sure you have measurements to those objectives, and keep on moving forward from that perspective.
And it'd be nice to also weave some of your personal story into the moonshot goals, because if you're really talking moonshot goals, the tour of duty that you've done really pales everything else that we've done. So it'd be nice for the group to kind of hear about that as well.
Sure. So I'll start there.
Yes.
And I'll start by saying I'm nothing special.
Except that he's with special forces.
I have 23 years in the military at this point in my career, and I signed up for it, and it's just part of the deal. And there are many others that gave far more than I. I was proud to go. The burden really was on my wife. At the time, my daughter was 3 years old. So for me, it's easy. I'm of single mind. I can, much as she probably doesn't want to hear this, I can turn it all off, and then I focus on what needs to be focused on. But she had to carry the load at home. So, and for any spouse of somebody who serves in the military, they really bear the burden of it.
Nice.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So in my civilian side, our moonshot goal, and it's funny, our CEO refers to it, and he didn't know I was coming, but he says we're aiming for the moon, and that is our digital transformation. So we're a medical society, and we're going to embark on this digital transformation. And it's a 5-year strategic goal to deliver actionable knowledge at the point of care for physicians, for cardiologists with their patients. So It's scary for the organization. We've broken it down into two bite-sized pieces, the digital transformation and the content transformation. So we have vast arrays of clinical knowledge. It's just hard to deliver it today at point of care. So we are, much like you said, we need to break it down into little bites and then move forward with it. It's scary for the older cardiologists who mostly serve on our board of trustees to try to explain what this is. Some think it's just, changing colors on a website. But what we really need to do is take that clinical knowledge and our patient data that we have and put that in front of the cardiologist with the patient. So.
Very nice. We call it the 1982 moment for us, and everyone, we have 30,000 people in Ashley, and they all get taught this, the 1982 moment. And Ron Wanek was our chairman, who was just a cabinet manufacturer at that time in Arcadia, Wisconsin. And he went to the Dallas Furniture Market, and he was selling his occasional tables at the Dallas Furniture Market. And in came imports from Japan and Taiwan. And so he always talks about the fact that they came in selling at their wholesale costs cheaper than his raw material costs were. So he was faced with a decision at that time, when we always call it the rebirth. So his decision was, he always calls it, he could have taken the ride and just said, I'd take the next 5 years and keep selling my occasional tables the best I can, and then I'll go out of business and move on to something else. Or I could, take the moonshot type of thing and rebirth my company. And so he went back to the factory in Arcadia, Wisconsin, and it was a occasional table factory, and he said, we're gonna retool the whole factory. We're gonna make it a bedroom factory. And he got on a plane and flew to Taiwan to start importing those occasional tables that he had seen coming in there. And so literally got there and opened up Yellow Pages and just started making phone calls to figure it out. So that became part of our DNA, and now we have what we call 15 major rebirths within our organization. And one of those was when they started putting tariffs. The tariff thing is very important to us and always has been in the furniture industry. They started putting tariffs on rolled material coming into the United States, fabric and leather and different things back in the end of the 90s. And so that forced us to move to China to be able to source where the materials were coming from, and maybe do some of the labor and cut and sew there. So that was my opportunity to actually get into the international side of the business. And my wife and I, we say we were going to go there for 2 to 3 years, and we came back 14 years later. But yeah, so that was a big thing for us, and we got to be part of just starting the operation there. Grew it to 7,000 people and a massive operation, but then again the environment changed, and we saw things moving to Vietnam. That was back in 2008 because of the currency change, and so I moved my family down to Vietnam, lived there for a year, and just kind of evolved our operations. Now all of our operations are out of China and in Vietnam.
So from my perspective, I'm in the weeds. I'm not at a CEO level. I'm in the weeds, in operations, doing the day-to-day tasks. I'm 24/7. My global perspective is support. So to get to the next level in our organization, we need to figure out how to moonshot, get the automation in place, and get out of the legacy, but still support it and drive towards that next level. It's about the support model. It's about the aspect of being ahead of the game. It's about all of our proactive monitoring. It's about the process to get an awareness before our customers do, because that's our drive, is to make sure that we are available for our customers 24/7, 99.9% uptime. It's that activity to get to that spot, which is where GAPS comes in, is to try and bridge that gap where we're missing out on moving out of the legacy environments to more of a cloud-based environment and fulfilling the need to continue the support models that were in the past and get to the next level and be more proactive. When you find tools that integrate data that comes out of it, that the marketing team can say, okay, this has value because my customer data is there. I can see something, and they can integrate it back into their tools. That's going forward, right? Taking the IT side of it, creating a value so that you're not just a cost center, and providing it back to the business.
When I talk about moonshot goals and stretch goals, one thing we have to remember that a CIO or technologies, it's one component in the ecosystem of a business. So we have to really understand what are the problems that the business is trying to solve, and how does technology really enable the business to achieve that goal. And ultimately, it's all about customers. That's why today's environment, if you ask many CIOs, they will tell you customer journey mapping, design thinking, robotic process automation, all of that. So on one hand, we have to think about business goals. How does the technology can enable the business to achieve their goals? But at the same time, we have to be the evangelist. We have to be able to sell the ideas. You cannot talk to the CEO about bits and bytes and router and switches. You have to talk to CEO about EBITDA. You've got to talk to CEO about market share. You've got to talk to CEO about cost constraint. You've got to talk to CEO about if, for example, we use the RPA or BPM, how can we automate some of the process as a result of that? How can we impact the cycle time? As a result of that, how could it really impact? My personal experience, I have few failures, by the way. The time that I got so concerned about myself and driving things based on my own ambition and not aligning it with the business and also not to take care of my staff, that's the time that I failed as a CIO. So it's extremely important for us to set the goals and objectives. We'll talk about it later on, but the goals have to be in line with the business strategy, and also it has to have an execution plan. Otherwise, a vision without the action plan is a hallucination.
Said two different things. One, operational, making sure the lights are on, they're stable, so business is not worried about technology, it runs. So that's the most important goal where we partnered with Gavs to bring that stability in. But on the other side, as we are in this not-for-profit, providing the service to 60,000 clients, like underprivileged clients, which are either foster children or people with special needs or mental disabilities or homeless. How do we bring the technology which makes it more to deliver the business outcomes much more smoother way that they can accomplish and serve the client? So that's where the digital transformation comes into picture. As an example, in our strategic plan that we put together after my third month into the job is, 3 years from now, we should have a natural query language or a natural processing language type of query to my business user or the program managers, where they can simply speak the plain English to get their how many beds are vacant in so and so facility, that we can bring in more clients. And then how many clients are there that we need to find foster parents that they can be out, type of, like we can call that as like a moonshot goal, because we currently still don't even have the proper data in a database or a data warehouse where everything is being run by spreadsheets. So our aspiration is to build that data warehouse and provide that kind of like transparent way that business can, in a natural way, that they can get their information so they can serve, because every dollar that we can save will go towards our clients. That's where the digital transformation will work. And with my experience with my previous bank, where we used like bots and robotic process automation in suspicious activity reporting, the similar type of things we want to do it for when businesses or our clinicians are capturing progress notes. And that progress note can be a searchable data by using these bots, which can highlight certain things which are common in requirements. So that's where we're going to, go to that moonshot type of.
No, nothing wrong with moonshine either.
I think any organization, either for-profit, not-for-profit, or nations, I think you have to create a higher purpose. And that's very important. And unless you have that higher purpose and you just focus on profit and loss, then you lose the strength of an organization.
Nice.
You know, when President Kennedy talked about sending, a man to the moon, they struggled first 2 years until they started thinking about a purpose of how they will bring the man back from the moon to the earth. And once they started focusing on that, they figured out how they're going to get it up there itself. And I think this requires a sense of culture. That's very important because, culture eats strategy any day. That's what Peter Drucker said in one of his books.
Yeah.
And to me, that's very critical. The question is what culture? What kind of culture? And you can apply this to your children or you can apply this to employees. There's something called roots and wings philosophy. That is, give your employees or your children roots so they have sense of security, stability, but make sure you give them wings so they fly, they take the risk of flying. And they know if they fail, they have roots to come back to. And if organizations start building that culture, you can see those organizations flourish all the way, or anything else. And
You can't function in a hostile environment if people are not empowered to make decisions at a tactical level. So for me, when I was in Afghanistan, I was the director of operations at Bagram Airfield. It was the busiest field in the DoD. We were 24/7, about 150 folks that I was responsible for, sometimes under fire, sometimes not. And you have to trust the leaders below you. You have to give them the ability to make decisions and hope that their training and trust that their training is intact. Translating that over to the civilian side, and there's two gentlemen with me from ACC, and they know this, but I think my job and my fellow division vice presidents who work at the college, and I'll refer to this, we have a lot of cylinders of excellence. So we have people that they're great in what they do, but they don't cross that cylinder, right? So that we are a more able organization and a more nimble organization to move forward. So it's growing that type of leadership, and it's growing the leadership below them, because it's great. If I know what I'm doing on IT, but I don't talk to the rest of the organization, what's the point? Right? So I try, personally for me, and hopefully these guys will attest to it, I let them run. They're smart, probably way smarter than I am about what we do, and I'm fortunate to have them, but they know that they have the ability to go ahead and lead and make decisions for the greater good of the organization.